Om Namo Narayanaaya. Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karvavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Om Satchidananda Rupaya Vishvotpatyadihetave Tapatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha Harihi Om. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Harihi Om. Suprabhatam. We all are studying a text composed by Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi Ji, Upadesha Sara. As we go ahead, the subject becomes subtle and subtler. In the last session, we have seen how Ramana Maharshi Ji gives us this indication that once a person has understood the reality, but what the seeker should understand, seeker must understand that unless and until the right inquiry is done, the clarity of the subject will not come to this seeker. Therefore, he gave a beautiful verse saying, Vigrahendriya pranadhitamaha nahamekasat tajjadam hyasat. A very logical approach to the supreme reality. What is that? Unless and until you negate that which is called as not self, that which is called as jadam, that which is called as inert, that which is ephemeral, that which is impermanent, negate it. Negate it, that does not mean you have to throw it away. Please understand, negate it means understand the nature of it. Understand the nature of it. So, the nature of body and the senses and also prana, then mind and intellect, as well as the tamaha, this so called as assemblage is jadam because it requires a support to exist. without the support it can't exist. And therefore, once we understand that this name and form is just an appearance, but the substratum of this each and everything in this universe is one and one, that is called as Sat. Sat, that which is an existence. Then a seeker may ask, "Oh my dear teacher, if there is a Sat which is an existence, we accept. But is there another consciousness, Chit, which knows this Sat?" Now a beautiful explanation is given. Sattva bhasika chitkva vetara satyaya hi chit chittaya hyayam. To make it more clear that there are no two, means one is existence, another is consciousness. Such thing is not there. This existence and this consciousness, if someone says it is different or if imagines it is different, then understand, if this consciousness is something different than the existence, that means this consciousness does not exist. It goes into a non-existence category. So this is illogical. Then if we say, okay, this consciousness has its own existence, that means this consciousness with its own existence and the existence which we have now understood, then there are two different entities called as one existence and another existence, which again is not possible, because once we have understood this existence, the Sat principle is infinite. So there cannot be another infinite at all. So both are illogical. Therefore, I am and I know I am. This is the fact. I am, that is called as the Sat, the existence, reality. I am and I know I am. This existence and consciousness are not two different entities. They are one and the same. The existence itself is consciousness. This consciousness itself is existence. And that's the nature of this supreme reality. Okay, but what about the Ishvara aspect now? Okay, oh my dear, let us now discuss this once more, the Ishvara aspect of this three important aspects of the universe. What are they? Jiva, Jagata and Ishvara. So Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi Ji gives us a very beautiful indication about it. Verse number 24. Isha jivayo veshadhibhida Isha jivayo veshadhibhida Satsvabhavato vastu kevalam Satsvabhavato vastu kevalam. One word and the meaning of it we'll see. Isha Jiva Yoho. Isha is called as Ishvara. Jiva Yoho is a Jiva Atma. Between these two, Vesha Dhibida, there is a difference from only the standpoint of Upadhi. standpoint of Upadhi. What is Upadhi? Body. What is body? Gross equipment. So, from the standpoint of the Upadhi, conditional adjunct, it appears there is a difference. Sat Swabhavatah, from the standpoint of its true nature, from the standpoint of its true nature, what it is? Vastu Kevalam. Vastu Kevalam. The supreme reality alone is. Supreme reality alone is. So, what is an important indication given by Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi Ji? First and foremost, for a seeker also every seeker must understand that reality is one and one alone. That reality is called as Vastu. So, in Vedanta, the supreme reality is called as Vastu, not a Vastu as we take it up as in Hindi. Vastu means a thing. Nahi, वैसे नहीं है ये. Vastu is that thing whose nature is Sat Chit Anand. That is alone. That alone is. Now there is a difference. There is a difference, and why is there a difference? Now let us analyze and understand. First and foremost, Vedanta explains three different standpoints. Those standpoints we must understand and always keep it in our mind. What is that? First standpoint is called as Paramarthik Satta. First standpoint is called as Paramarthik Satta, absolute reality. In this absolute reality, there is nothing other than one and one self. There is nothing other than one and one self, that is Paramatma Tattva. That is Paramatma Tattva. One without the second. So, here it is said Vastu Kevalah Sat Swabhavatah. From the standpoint of its true nature, it is one and one alone. Okay. Now, second reality which is explained in Vedanta Shastra is called as transactional reality. Is called as transactional reality. So, what is transactional reality? When there are things and beings in this universe. When there are things and beings in this universe. So, understand the whole universe is interdependent. Whole universe is interdependent. Example, humans are giving up carbon dioxide in the process of breathing, and plant kingdom take up that carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. So, human beings as well as plant kingdom are living interdependently. So simple to understand. This is how the whole universe is existing interdependently. Every one of us are living because we are interdependent. Okay, this is a fact of transactional reality. So when we are interdependent, we depend on something for what? For our day-to-day activity. So that's called as give and take. Give and take sort of phenomena. So give and take, that's the standpoint, that's the reality of transactional world, where there is always a give and take. So this give and take, wherever there is always a continuous change which is happening in this transactional reality. Now, please note, what is the reality of transaction level? Continuous change is the reality. Please note this beautiful point. What is the reality of this second satta called as transactional world? Continuous change. That itself is a reality, because it will never be changeless. Never, never and never. Okay, that's the reality. It is the third aspect of this reality, that means standpoint, is illusory reality. So, a person can understand illusory reality is the example that is of dream. In that dream, a person sees the different world, is in the different world, and a very mixed sort of experiences this person is now having. In that state of dream, a person can be very joyful, or a person can be very sorrowful, or a person can be very scared and can fall down, from the cot or from the bed. So, what it denotes, though it is illusory, but in that moment of illusion, what's happening? It is affecting this body, mind, intellect. So therefore, that is also considered as a reality of a short time, because in that time that becomes a reality. Though after waking up, a person understands, oh, it was all illusion, but at that moment it was reality. Nobody can refute it. Why is it so? Because the effect of that was seen on this BMI, called as body, mind and intellect. Okay, now these are the three important levels of reality Vedanta Shastra is explaining. Here, Isha Jivayoho Veshadi Bhita. Now, what is the indication? We accept what we accept. There is a difference between what? The Jiva and Ishwar. We do not refute at all. There is a Jiva and there is a Ishwar. But from which standpoint? That one has to understand. From which standpoint? So let us again focus on this standpoint. In absolute reality, a person must understand this example. What is the example? The actor, though he is there as an actor, but has not taken any role. No role. Why? Because he is resting. Example. It is example. Which is this resting state? It is called as deep sleep state. Now then, actor is there who can do different roles, but he is in an absolute resting state. That means there where there is no modification at all. Okay, in that resting stage, take an example of a deep sleep. This actor, though can act and take a different roles, at this moment there is no role and there is no actor also. So what is there? There is only one and one reality. That's called as the supreme nature of this actor. So called. This is an example, please understand. So the moment this actor wakes up, then the whole transactional world comes into the picture. Now please understand, in this state where there is continuous oneness, in this deep sleep state, a child or a beggar, of a football player or a prime minister of any country, if they are all at once in this state which is called as deep sleep state, then there is no difference at all. Why? Because as though they are disconnected with this BMI called as body, mind and intellect. Therefore, there is no difference at all. From which standpoint? From that standpoint of deep sleep. That's what we are trying to understand and explain. This is an absolute reality. But the moment someone wakes up, then that is identification with that upadhi. The identification happens when waking stage comes. When the waking stage comes. In the waking stage, there are two, me and the world. And therefore, there is a transactional between the world and me as an actor now. And therefore, I take up lot of roles, because without the roles, I cannot transact. So that's the reality. So role taking is just for the sake of transaction. Now, one must be very clear about. See, when somebody takes up the role, and though he knows his true nature, I am giving an example now. Can any realized person, if a guru comes in front, will he stand like this and say, "Oh Guru, now you and me are one, so why should I stand up? I will just sit down and look at you." No, not like that. So when the guru comes, the disciple will get up and do the pranam. Why? This is called as transactional world. And that transactional world, if this person does not do, that means we are giving a wrong message to the whole society. Because in the transactional world has its own rules and regulation. Like if the realized person is there and a mother and father comes, so what this person will say, "No, I am unborn, I have no death, so where is my mother and where is my father? There is no mother and there is no father." This is also not possible. This is also called as a very wrong way of understanding. So, even though a person is realized, when the transactional world comes, one has to act according to the transactional world. Now, please understand, very important, I am giving an example, another example. See, somebody who was working for a big government organization, and now after 40 years or 35 years or 30 years of service, now this person is retiring from a good, nice, very big post. Okay. After his retirement, will the government office will run or not? Yes. The transactional will not stop just because a person is now retired. So though the person is retired, the transactional will keep happening, because this world is also called as Pravahi Nityam. Pravahi Nityam means though it is changing, but the change is continuous. It's happening continuous. So therefore, the world remains same. So when the world remains same, please understand the controller of the whole world also remains there. Retirement, this in this example is called realization. So somebody who realizes, so though he comes out of this so-called as government office, but the whole rules and regulation of the world keep happening. Therefore, the controller will be there. And now you will understand. Karturagyaya prapyate phalam. Even though a realized person is doing action, though he is not bound by that action, but the result will come from the Kartur Agya. That means the controller of the universe, one who is the power, one who is the almighty supreme truth, one who is a controller, he only gives the result. So karma phala data, it is called as karma phala data. So the karma phala data will give a result to even if the realized person is working. Please understand this. So therefore, the action cannot remain only restricted to the person. Why? Because every action involves n number of things in this world. Now example, though it appears that I am alone is giving this lecture, this pravachan, but can you just imagine the lights are on here. Therefore, the electricity department is working. That means the ashram has n number of people, they are working for this continuous flow of the electricity. And the power station, which is a very big power station which maintains the flow of electricity, that's working. Then the generation of electricity which is happening somewhere in our country, that whole department is working. Just imagine, it's not that just for the time being it appears that I alone is working, but in this action how many actions are involved, it is beyond imagination. Therefore, the Ishwaratva has to be there to control every action. Now, from the standpoint of the world, always the controller of the universe will remain as it is, and will nothing will happen to this Ishvara from the standpoint of this world. But from the standpoint of this individual, now please understand, from the standpoint of the individual, now one who has given up, what one has given up? Identification with this one important entity which is a illusory entity called as ego. Ahamiba, ahamina shabha, ahamaham taya. Now what is that? This enquiry which leads to the result where the illusory entity called as ego gets completely destroyed. Once that ego is destroyed, again and again we have to remember what is called as destruction. Destruction is nothing but falsification. Destruction is nothing but a falsification. Let me give a simple example for it. Few years before, people used to consider really what is that? If a cat crosses the road, where you want to go somewhere for important task, and if a cat goes just cross you, then the person will have this thought in the mind that, my God, the cat has gone and crossed my road. Now I cannot go for this important task, because crossing the cat that road is called as apshakun, called as something which is negative, which is called as evil. This is called as wrong notion. Now today, at least those who are clear with the knowledge as an understanding, they also see the cat, they also see the cat crossing the path, but they have falsified now this thought which was there as the cat which crosses the path. This movement, this so-called as thing is negative, evil. This notion is dropped. That means there is a destruction of negativity. Negative thought is destroyed. That means you have falsified. Can't you remember that this thought was there, and you also remember sometimes, oh, few years before I also had this thought. I used to also think in this way, let me just wait and somebody can pass by and then only let me go. How, actually wrong thought. That means if the cat is going and crossing the path or road, and someone is going, one who doesn't know, for that person this rule does not apply. Or if it applies, then you are allowing that person to go and get into negativity or fall in ditch or get into trouble, and you have to save yourself because you want to put someone else into the trouble. That's the complete negative understanding. So what is called as falsification, we have seen with a simple example. We drop that thought, and that thought never troubles us. Therefore, one who has realized the self by right contemplation, by right enquiry, by falsifying this false entity called as ego, that person is now retired. Just for example, that person is retired. Now that person does not have any kartavya karma of this office. That means realization means what? One who has dropped this notion of doership. Once this notion of doership is dropped, then there is no enjoyership. Therefore, one who is abiding in the self alone can grow above this. So therefore, let me give another example to make it more clear, that there is called as control and there is called as sublimation. Understand these 2 points. Somebody when says, I want to control my desire. My dear, you can definitely control, but control is always a permanent, it is not a permanent thing at all. Example is given like this. Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayanand Ji gives this beautiful example. He says, when a tennis ball, if you forcefully put under the water in the tank, the moment you remove your pressure, the tennis ball will jump out of the water. Similarly, the desire. If somebody is just suppressing that desire and trying to control it, that desire does not get destroyed. That desire remains there, and the moment the right atmosphere is gained, it comes up forcefully like that of the tennis ball. So what is the method? sublimation. What is sublimation? Growing above it, understanding the unreal nature of it. So slowly, one who grows above that desire, then that desire does not have any substance to hold on, and therefore it disappears. So therefore, this is a right method. Let us only understand this example to make us sure what is called as falsification. And therefore, when it is said here, Isha Jivayo Veshadhi Bida, understand the difference is only from the standpoint of the Upadhi. Now, last example, but a very classic example which we all must understand. Hanumanji beautifully explains this concept. How does he give this concept? With what clarity Hanumanji says? To Ramji, Deha Drishtya tu dasoham. From the standpoint of this body, I am your servant, O my dear Lord. Okay, Deha Drishtya tu daso aham. First statement. Second, Jiva Drishtya tvat anshakaha. Jiva Drishtya tvat anshakaha. From the standpoint of this Jivatva, I am your ansha, called as part. I am your part only. So you are infinite, but I am the part of that infinite which is finite. So Jivatva is finite and Ishwaratva is infinite. Okay. Second important point is understood from the standpoint of Jiva, I am, that is Ansha, as a part of the Lord. Third, Vastutaha, from the standpoint of real nature, Tvameva aham iti nischala matihi. Tvameva aham iti nischala matihi. From which standpoint? Vastutaha. And here it is explained, Vastu kevalam. From that which standpoint? Svatsvabhavata Vastu kevalam. From that standpoint of the true nature, it is that one and one reality. So Hanumanji is telling that if I am there in this transactional world, I am Dasa of Bhagavan. If I have this Jivatva, then I am the Ansha of the Bhagavan. But in reality, my true nature is that and that alone, that which is called as the nature of the Bhagavan. And therefore, there cannot be a difference at all between the two from the standpoint of reality. Having seen this, we can conclude that if somebody is seeing the reality, it is only because of conditioning. And conditioning is because of identification. Once a person drops the identification, then there cannot be any conditioning for that person at all. Having understood this, now Bhagavan says a very beautiful verse which is called as, what is called as Ishvara Darshan. What is called as Ishvara Darshan. A very beautiful verse, verse number 25. Veshahanata Svatma Darshanam. Veshahanata Svatma Darshanam. Isha Darshanam Svatma Rupatah. Isha Darshanam Svatma Rupatah. How it is explained now. One first Word meaning we will see. Vesha hanataha. One who gives up Vesha, called as this body, called as this Upadhi. This Upadhi is called as Vesha here. Svatma Darshanam. One who gives up this Vesha, which is called as Upadhi, then what is the next step? Sva Atma Darshanam. That person sees the self. Now here, seeing the self means being the self. Here, seeing the self means being the self. Okay. Then what is that? Once who sees the self, that itself is called as Isha Darshanam. That is called as a vision of the God. Vision of that God. When we understand the first Svatma Darshanam is a vision of the self, that vision of the self and the vision of the Lord, there is no difference at all. Svatma Rupataha. From which standpoint? As the self, there is no difference at all. So therefore, one who realizes the self realizes the supreme reality, and the supreme reality is called as here Ishwar Darshana, and this Ishwar Darshan itself is called as Svatma Darshanam. Okay. Now here, point to be understood and reflect over. When it is said, one who gives up this Upadhi, this Vesha. Now ask the question, can you give it up, this body, mind and intellect? Good question or not? Yes. Can you really physically give it up? No. Body, mind and intellect cannot be given up like that of physical one who gives up. So, understand how one must think about it, how one must know about it. First step, can we give up body? No. Can we give up senses? No. Can we give up mind and intellect? No. Can we give up relationship? No. Then, what is to be given up? There is only one and one thing which needs to be really given up, and that is called as this illusory entity called as ego. Again and again, it is coming to one and one only aspect. What is to be given up? This ego. Now please understand, in Vedanta Shastra, what is ego? Doership and enjoyership itself is called as ego. And it is not that which is understood as a pride. No doubt that pride is also another sort of meaning to this ego. But from the Vedantic standpoint, what is called as ego? Doership and the enjoyership of action. So, let me just tell you now a very important aspect, very Vedantic concept. Understand, the whole universe is because of one and one cause. Is because of one and one cause. Now let me give you first example. This is an example. Example always has a limitation. So, but example completely makes a point clear. Now example is, mud is there as a material cause of mud pot. Mud is there as a material cause of mud pot. And there is a potter, Kumhar. There is a potter who makes this mud pot using the mud. Now mud is called as Upadana Karana. material cause. Okay. Then this potter is called as efficient cause, called as nimitya karana. So, in this case of potter, as well as this case of potter and the mud, mud is different than the potter. The potter is using the mud, but in this universal standpoint, the material cause of the universe is a Lord alone, and efficient cause of the whole universe is Lord alone. That means in our example, mud, which is a material cause, is Lord alone in that form, and the potter which is there in this example is a Lord himself. So, nimitya upadana karana is one and one alone. Therefore, you can now understand how can there be any difference when the upadana karana, the nimitya karana, the material cause and the efficient cause is one and one alone, then how can there be a difference? So, there is a beautiful verse which is called as a verse of realization, where the Lord explains in the 6th chapter, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra, Sarvam cha mai pashyati, Sarvam cha mai pashyati, Tasyaham na pranashyami, Tasyaham na pranashyami, Sachamena pranashyati, Sachamena pranashyati. What a beautiful explanation. Bhagavan says, Yomam pashyati sarvatra. He who sees me everywhere. Sarvam chamai pashyati. He who sees everything in me alone. Sachamena pranashyati. Such person does not remain away from me, and I do not remain away from him. Because now he is me and me is he. Saha aham asmi, aham saha asmi. So that's called as Svatma darshanam, Isha darshanam, Veshahanata, Svatma darshanam, Isha darshanam, Svatmarupataha. From the standpoint of that supreme reality, the self, the Isha darshanam and the Atma darshanam is one and one alone. That's how here Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi Ji gives us such a beautiful indication of how the seeker can reach to that supreme reality, and what is a vision of the self as well as what is a vision of the Lord. Let us contemplate on these beautiful verses by doing our regular meditation after the class. Wherever you are, sit properly in one posture. Let your back and neck be straight. Check that all your body parts are comfortable. Check your facial muscle is relaxed and there is a pleasant expression on your face. Close your eyes. Let us focus on our mind. Let the mind be one-pointed. Now we recollect today's important indication given by Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi Ji. In the verse 24, it is explained there that yes, the difference is there between the Jiva and Ishvara. Isha Jivayo Veshadi Beda. There is a difference from the standpoint of Upadhi. Svatsvabhavata Vastu Kevalam. But from the standpoint of the true nature of the self, there is one and one reality, the self alone. Then we have seen how Vedanta explains beautifully to understand this concept of Jiva and Ishvara. So when there is a transactional reality, the controller of the universe, Karma Phaladata, will always be there. Because world is also called as Pravahi Nityam. Though it is continuously changing, but this change is continuous. And therefore, the world remains there. So the controller of the world also remains there. But one who, with right understanding and with the right spiritual practices, gives up this conditioning of body, mind and intellect, then what happens? Then there is one and one alone, that is the self. So standpoint must be understood in this whole transactional world. There is always an interdependent existence. Even though someone is realized person, that person has to depend on n number of things for the continuation of this life. Even though a realized person acts in this world, the result has to come from the Karma Phaladata, the Ishvara, the universal power. But now this person who has given up this illusory identity, that is ego, has given up the doership and enjoyership. Therefore, even though he acts, there is no karma bandhana, there is no bondage at all. Veshahanata svatma darshanam Isha darshanam svatma rupatah. What is the vision of the Lord? One who gives up this identification of this illusory identity, then the self shines its forth on its own. There is no doership, there is no enjoyership. Though the world remains same, but this world and the actions done in the world are not binding for this person, because he has given up this wrong notion of being a jiva. As we have understood, destruction of the ego is not something as we destroy an object. It is just a falsification. So for that, we have seen one example of a cat crossing the road. This was there as a wrong notion that this action of this crossing a cat, our own road, is an evil action. It's called as negative action. But having understood the reality, we have dropped this notion. Now even though if the cat crosses our road, we smile in our mind and go ahead. This is called as destruction of the wrong notion, falsification of the wrong notion. Veshahanata Svatma Darshanam. Here we have seen the whole universe, the cause of one. The cause of the universe is one and one alone. Upadana Karana, the material cause. Efficient cause, that is called as Nimitya Karana, of the whole world is one and one alone. He who understands and sees that oneness by giving up this finiteness because of illusory identity of ego, sees the world as the self. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. He who sees the self everywhere and sees everything in the self, such a person does not remain away from the Lord, and the Lord does not remain away from this person. This is called as Svatma Darshanam, Ishvara Darshanam, Svatma Rupataha. Shanti. 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 Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Harihi Om. Have a complete gratitude to the Almighty Lord, one who gives us this beautiful knowledge as well as this beautiful moment of life. Have a great gratitude toward one and all around us who is responsible for today what we are. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namo